The following is Info Visuals Shop Floor. We will cover the labor application. The following is part of the Shop Floor video series. We will review the labor application. To begin, we'll be looking at common features. To start with, we'll look at the user preferences. From the main menu, we'll go into Preferences. We are currently signed in as a non-sysadmin user. Later on, you'll see many more preferences for the sysadmin user. Starting from the top, we can select the site ID. You can set the display time format. There are 7 possible options. You can also set the default employee ID at this point. If you do not fill in the default employee ID, there is another option to use the default employee ID from logged in user. I will submit my changes and go and look at the display. Back in the labor main menu, you can see the time information, the user ID, and you'll notice that there's a picture attached to it that comes from the setup on the employee maintenance. Let's review the direct labor transaction and process flow. We'll also include some additional preferences. Employees can be clocked into the shop floor system, and you'll notice that it brings me back to the main labor menu. There are 2 sysadmin preferences that you can set if you didn't want to have automatic submit. You could go through and announce the transaction accepted, and you can ask for confirmation. As an example, I'll clock in another employee. Notice this time here, I get the confirmed transaction. Then I can see that the transaction was accepted. Let's review some of the other transaction types. Let's go into the setup, and I'll enter in a work order and the resource ID. I'll submit, and you can see the confirm message as well as the transaction accepted message coming up based upon the preference settings. I can also go in and work with a stop job transaction. I'm stopping the setup at this point. You'll notice on the bottom I can go through and put in deviated quantities, deviated reason ID. You could select from the list. You can come in and put a comment in for the deviation reason. And you can also flag the setup complete at this point in time. I haven't changed my preferences, so I still get the confirm transaction as well as the accept transaction. Next, going back into the preference maintenance, we'll take a look at operator is allowed to change the resource ID. Continuing with the flow transactions, we'll look at the start run. Inside of start run, I will go through and enter in a base ID, the lot, the split, the sub, and the operation. And the resource ID appears, and I'll change it to another active resource ID. Submit, and of course the confirmation and the accept transaction messages. Before moving on to the stop job transactions, let's go through and set a few more preferences. We can turn on the show operation quantity completed, operation quantity deviated, as well as the operation quantity remaining. Now let's open stop job. As you can see over here on the right hand side, those 3 options are out there as far as the show preferences. I can also come down here now and enter the quantity completed, quantity deviated if there were any, and add the comments. And of course I could end the run at this point in time. Let's review a second stop job transaction. This time I'll include trace and labels. I'm going to go in, enter my quantity, then go up and press the trace button. Here I'm able to go in and put in the trace attributes, all set up from the visual side, and I'll accept the attributes. I could have added or deleted or reset from here as well. Once I have the trace, I can now go over and print the labels, and I can choose from a label or a group. I'm going to choose my label set, and then I'll accept it and submit. And there's an example using trace and label printing. Another setting to review for labor is the automatically compute quantity complete. For example, I'm looking at a work order operation that's going to take 2 pieces per minute of runtime. That'll be the estimate. I've already started the job Now I'm going to go in and stop the job. I'll scroll down below and you'll notice that the quantity complete is grayed out because it's going to be automatically calculated. I'll stop this job. I'll get my messages. Next I will go over to my labor and we'll take a look at that labor ticket. I'm going to scroll over to the right and here's where I can show you the calculation. I have hours worked, 0.05 hours, which equates to 3 minutes. The autocomplete quantity will be 6 units. The process flow may be better if we use the job search utility. Here I can go through and add in the resource ID that I'm working on, or browse for the resource ID. I could do it by part ID as well. I can show more and get specific work order information. But I'm going to come down and I will select one of my work orders, and it already enters that detailed information. I'll submit, receiving my messages. I'm going to go back into my user preferences and show you the Quick Start Jobs option. Going back into the job search, you'll notice this time when I select the work order, I'll hit the Start Run, I'm automatically sent through to the messages. I don't need to modify or submit anything once I've done that selection. The next common feature we can look at is the scan option. So going to the main labor menu, you'll notice down on the bottom left hand side is the scan mode. Select that and I'll go into the Start Run and you'll notice that the header has the scan information, and this is where I'd actually go through and start to wand in or scan in my information. Next we'll move over to Indirect Labor. To begin, we'll go through the preference options for indirect labor. There is, of course, the default indirect ID for clock in and clock out. And then over on the options, you'll notice that I can allow comments on indirect. Let's go back to the menu and take a look at these options. I'll clock out, and on clock out, you see I get my warning messages at this point. We go down to my labor. You'll notice that I do have an indirect ticket that's created on the clock out. I could also go in and do an indirect ticket, choose my indirect options that come from employee maintenance. And here's where I can actually fill in the comment that we have from the preference maintenance. Another indirect transaction type, of course, would be your break type transactions. I could select this option and of course it just puts my employee on break or break for reporting, whether it's on a indirect or direct job at this point. Before moving into the advanced features, I just want to go through one more common feature, and that is project reporting. And inside of preference maintenance, again, we do have settings for projects. For both of them, whether you're doing a work order ticket or a project ticket, you have the choice of employee, prompt for employee, resource, or prompt for resource. I would like to next review some of the advanced settings, starting with the duration threshold. Starting in preference maintenance, going down to the duration threshold, you'll notice that there are 12 hours already entered for the threshold. Going back to labor ticket entry, you'll notice that the employee that I have logged in states that the threshold has been reached. Use labor ticket entry to update. Additionally, you'll notice since the labor ticket is past its threshold, the employee cannot enter any of these other tasks. Let's use the employees clocked in utility to review this deeper. Labor tickets with the red font in this window display that the threshold has been passed. Two other visible features of this window are flags, and you can also identify who's scheduled to work. The flags, if it's red, it's indicating that the employee has not clocked in. The green is identifying that the employee is clocked in and is working on the job. And the blue is identifying that the employee is clocked in. You'll see the following flag when an employee is clocked into VTA but is not clocked into a direct or indirect labor ticket. There are several filters that you can use as well, including show clocked in only, as well as show scheduled only. Going to the header, you can go into employee ID, department ID, shift ID, and they all have browse capabilities, or you can specifically enter in an employee's name. There's also a dynamic filter that you can type any information and it will check all of the columns inside of the rows. Scrolling to the right, you should be able to see more items that you can work with on this utility. Next, we can review the multiple jobs functionality. Preference maintenance has the options for multiple jobs. You can set it to be not allowed, prorate hours spent on hours worked, or prorate cost. When multiple jobs are allowed, users can simply go in and either start additional jobs or even stop additional jobs that might be in process. Multiple select options exist inside of the scheduling view as well as the My Labor view. Let's take a look at the My Labor view. You'll notice that my clocked in employee already has 3 labor tickets in process. I'll scroll over here to the right hand side so that you can see the status of in process. Going back to the left, you'll notice that there is a column here for multiple select. I can stop multiple jobs at the same time with this option. I'll select 2 jobs and I'll go up to the stop job option, and here it'll go through and give me a warning about the quantities and it'll confirm the update. The next functionality we'll look at is operation reporting. Additionally, going back into preference maintenance, down on the bottom you'll know that it can allow out of sequence, do not allow out of sequence, or prompt. In this case here I chose prompt. I'm going to choose labor by work order, show you this functionality, and inside of here you'll notice that I'm going to skip the top 3 operations and go to the last one. I go to enter in the labor ticket and I get the prompt that we were talking about from preference maintenance, stating that prior operations are not complete. Do you want to continue? And it'll allow me to accept and continue since I chose the prompt option. Submit the ticket and it'll allow the out of sequence ticket. We can further review the labor by work order utility by scrolling to the right hand side, and you'll notice the additional columns or the multiple columns that you can work with this functionality. The last feature we will cover is the efficiency. Going back into preference maintenance, you'll notice that at the bottom I have 2 threshold levels. Going into my labor, as an example, I'm going to go in and you'll notice up on the header section, for a date range that I chose, I can come up with the efficiency factors. And here you can see the calculation. Estimated hours divided by hours worked, and then we extended times 100. Giving us the calculation in this example of 157.6. Scrolling to the right, I can show you individual rows. So each labor ticket has its own level of efficiency depending upon the reporting. Notice estimated hours. I'll divide it by the hours worked and it'll come up with the efficiency percentage. I can also filter down to just the ones that have passed the thresholds. So you can see I have 2 tickets, one that's in the yellow zone and the top one is in the red zone. Thank you for watching the labor video as part of the shop floor video series.